The mind can be most exhausted when the room is completely quiet. There may be no traffic outside, no television playing, no one asking anything from you. The kitchen light may be off. The house may have settled into the deep silence that comes after midnight. Yet inside, 100 conversations continue. A mistake from 10 years ago returns with perfect detail. A message you sent this afternoon is examined word by word. A future that has not happened begins demanding answers. The body is in bed, but the mind is still standing in a crowded station, watching every train arrive at once. You may have tried to reason with it. You may have told yourself to stop thinking. You may have counted breaths, turned off your phone, listened to soft music, or promised that tomorrow you would finally get your life under control. Still, the thoughts continued. This is one of the quiet contradictions of being human. We want peace, but we keep arguing with the mind. We want rest, but we treat rest like another task to complete. We want freedom, but we hold tightly to every fear because we believe vigilance will keep us safe. You are listening to Still Mind Temple, a quiet place for the mind to rest. Tonight, there is nothing you need to force. These stories are not instructions carved in stone. They are lamps placed along a dark road. Some may speak to you immediately. Others may remain quiet until a different season of your life. Let them come as they come. You do not have to remember every word. You do not have to understand everything. You only have to listen. Long ago, in a monastery at the edge of a pine forest, there lived a young monk who was known for being intelligent. He could memorize a teaching after hearing it once. He could debate older monks and point out contradictions in their arguments. He understood difficult ideas quickly, and because of this, he secretly believed awakening would come to him sooner than it came to others. But his mind never rested. During meditation, he compared his posture to the monk beside him. During meals, he reviewed the morning's teaching. While sweeping the hall, he planned the questions he would ask the master. Even when the temple bell faded into evening, his thoughts continued explaining the sound. One day, frustrated by his lack of peace, he approached the old abbot. "Master," he said, "I have studied the teachings carefully. I understand impermanence. I understand attachment. I understand that thoughts are not the self. Why is my mind still disturbed?" The abbot was pouring tea. He filled the student's cup, but he did not stop when the tea reached the rim. It spilled over the sides, across the table, and onto the floor. The young monk jumped back. "Master, the cup is full. Nothing more can go in." The abbot set down the pot. "Your mind is also full," he said. "Full of what you think you know, and what you hope others will notice that you know. How can peace enter a cup that is already overflowing?" The student looked at the tea running between the wooden boards. He had expected a secret technique. He had received a wet floor. For many days, the image stayed with him. He began to notice how often his mind was not meeting life directly. It was measuring, naming, comparing, collecting. He did not simply hear the rain. He judged whether the rain helped his meditation. He did not simply speak with another monk. He evaluated whether the conversation made him appear wise. He did not simply sit. He watched himself sitting. The cup was always full. Perhaps your mind is full in the same way. Not because you are arrogant, but because life has asked you to carry so much. Responsibilities, memories, plans, regrets, the needs of children, the health of parents, bills that wait on the kitchen counter, news that arrives before breakfast, messages that make you feel needed, guilty, or forgotten. The mind keeps collecting because it believes that holding everything is the same as protecting everything. but a full mind cannot receive the present moment. The first sign that something is changing within you may be very small. You may notice that you do not have to answer every thought. You may sit at a red light and feel no need to reach for your phone. You may hear rain against the window and allow it to be only rain. This is not emptiness in the sense of having nothing. It is space, and space is where the mind begins to breathe. Another story tells of a farmer who lived near a mountain village. He owned one horse, and because the family depended on that horse for work, it was considered his most valuable possession. One evening, the horse broke through the fence and disappeared into the hills. The neighbors came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer looked toward the darkening mountain. "Perhaps," he replied. 3 days later, the horse returned, leading several wild horses behind it. The neighbors gathered again. "What wonderful luck," they said. "Now you are rich." The farmer repaired the fence. "Perhaps," he replied. A week later, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown to the ground and broke his leg. The neighbors came carrying soup. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer sat beside his son. "Perhaps," he replied. Soon after, soldiers arrived in the village to take young men into a distant war. Because the farmer's son could not walk, he was left behind. The neighbors wept with relief. "What wonderful luck," they said. The farmer looked at his sleeping son and said only perhaps. This story is sometimes misunderstood as a reason not to care. That is not its meaning. The farmer cared deeply. He searched for the horse. He treated his son's injury. He repaired what needed repairing. But he did not allow one moment to become the final meaning of his life. An exhausted mind wants immediate judgment. Good, bad, success, failure, blessing, disaster. The mind does this because labels create the feeling of control. If we can name an event, perhaps we can contain it. If we decide what it means, perhaps uncertainty will stop frightening us. But life often reveals its meaning slowly. The unanswered message may protect you from a harmful relationship. The job you did not receive may redirect you toward work that fits your life better. The opportunity you celebrate may bring pressures you never expected. The painful conversation you fear may become the first honest moment in a relationship. A new opportunity does not guarantee peace. More money does not guarantee peace. A spiritual teacher does not guarantee transformation. Good people still face illness. Kind people still lose those they love. Mindful people still make mistakes. Buddhist practice is not a bargain in which we behave well and life agrees not to hurt us. Wisdom does not control the weather. It teaches us how to stand in the rain. You may notice inner change when uncertainty no longer feels like an enemy you must defeat. You still make plans. You still act responsibly. But you stop demanding that life reveal the entire road before you take the next step. You begin to say, "I do not know yet." And strangely, that sentence may bring more peace than 100 forced answers. There was once a scholar who traveled for many weeks to meet a Zen master famous for answering difficult questions. The scholar arrived carrying books, notes, and a carefully prepared list. He bowed and asked, "What is the deepest teaching?" The master looked at him and said, "Have you eaten?" The scholar was confused. "Yes," he replied. "I ate before coming." "Then wash your bowl." The scholar waited. The master said nothing more. At first, the scholar felt insulted. He had crossed mountains for this. He had left his work, spent his savings, and prepared questions about suffering, consciousness, and enlightenment. "Wash your bowl." But that evening, While staying at the monastery, he watched the monks after dinner. No one rushed. Each person carried a bowl to the well, rinsed it carefully, dried it, and placed it back on the shelf. The task was ordinary, yet the scholar noticed that his own life was filled with unfinished moments. He ate while thinking about work. He worked while thinking about rest. He rested while worrying about what he had not completed. He left conversations while still preparing arguments. He carried yesterday into today, and today into tomorrow. His bowl was never washed. The mind becomes exhausted not only from what happens, but from how much remains mentally open. A phone call you keep delaying. An apology you know you owe. A drawer filled with documents you are afraid to examine. A doctor's appointment you keep postponing. A boundary you know must be set. A small responsibility becomes heavy when carried for months. The teaching was not that washing dishes leads magically to enlightenment. The teaching was that peace often enters through completion. One thing, done with care. Then the next. You may begin to notice a new steadiness when you stop asking, "How do I fix my whole life?" and instead ask, "What is the next honest thing?" Perhaps it is sending the message. Perhaps it is taking 3 conscious breaths before speaking. Perhaps it is putting away the cup. Perhaps it is asking for professional help. Perhaps it is turning off the noise and sitting quietly for 10 minutes. The mind does not always need a grand solution. Sometimes it needs one completed act. In another village, a woman came to a teacher carrying a baby in her arms. The child had died. Grief had torn through her so completely that she refused to believe what had happened. She begged the teacher for medicine. "Please," she said, "you are wise. Bring my child back." The teacher did not shame her. He did not tell her to accept the loss. He saw that her heart could not yet receive such words. He said, "Bring me a mustard seed from a home that has never known death." The woman went from door to door. At the first house, the family offered her mustard seeds, but when she asked whether anyone had died there, an old man pointed to an empty chair where his wife once sat. At the second house, a mother told her about a son who had never returned from war. At the third, a young woman spoke of her sister. At another, a child had died before learning to walk. The woman continued until evening. Every home had a story. Every kitchen held an absence. Every family meal had a name no longer spoken in the same way. She returned without the mustard seed. But she returned changed. Her grief had not disappeared. Her child was still gone. Yet she was no longer standing alone outside the human family. She had seen that sorrow was not a punishment directed only at her. Kind people suffer because love makes us vulnerable to loss. Mindful people suffer because bodies age, relationships change, and life remains uncertain. Practice does not build a wall around the heart. It helps the heart remain open without drowning. There is an obstacle that often hides inside grief, the belief that letting go means betraying what we loved. A parent keeps a room unchanged for years. A widow leaves one side of the bed untouched. A man hears his father's voice in an old voicemail and cannot delete it. These acts are not wrong. Grief has its own timing. No one should be rushed through it, but the heart may eventually discover that releasing pain is not the same as releasing love. You can carry love without carrying the sharpest edge of suffering every day. You can forgive the past without pretending it was harmless. You can move forward without saying that what happened did not matter. You may notice inner change when a memory returns and you no longer fight it. You let it sit beside you like an old traveler on a park bench. You do not ask it to leave. You do not follow it home. You simply breathe until it passes. Long ago, a young monk was walking with his teacher along a muddy road after heavy rain. They came to a flooded crossing where a woman stood in fine clothing, unable to step through the mud. Without hesitation, the older monk lifted her in his arms, carried her across, and set her down safely. The woman thanked him, and the monks continued walking. Hours passed. The younger monk became increasingly tense. Finally, he said, "We are not supposed to touch women. How could you carry her?" The older monk looked surprised. "I put her down at the river," he said. "Why are you still carrying her?" Resentment is one of the heaviest things the mind carries. Someone speaks carelessly, and the moment lasts for years. A sibling fails to call. A partner does not defend you. A friend disappears during your hardest season. A supervisor humiliates you in a meeting. The event may take 30 seconds. The mind carries it through hundreds of mornings. Resentment often begins as protection. We replay what happened because we do not want to be fooled again. We hold anger because it seems to prove that the harm mattered. We imagine arguments because we want a better ending, but the body does not know that the argument is imaginary. The jaw tightens. The heart races. Sleep becomes shallow. The harmful person may be living peacefully somewhere else while your nervous system continues the conflict. Forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. It does not require returning to abuse. It does not mean reopening a door that wisdom told you to close. Sometimes forgiveness means, I will no longer let what you did organize my inner life. A calm boundary can be an act of compassion toward yourself. Leaving a harmful situation can be part of practice. Calling a therapist, doctor, counselor, or trusted friend can be part of practice. Spiritual language should never be used to keep someone trapped in danger. You may recognize change when you stop preparing speeches for someone who is not in the room. You may still remember. You may still protect yourself. But you are no longer carrying them across every river. There is an old story about a warrior who came to a Zen teacher and asked, "Is there really a heaven and a hell?" The teacher looked at him and said, "Who are you?" "I am a warrior," the man replied proudly. The teacher laughed. "You? A warrior? You look like a beggar." The warrior's face changed. His hand moved to his sword. The teacher continued, "And that sword is probably too dull to cut anything." The warrior pulled the blade free. The teacher said quietly, "Here opens the gate of hell." The warrior froze. He understood. His anger had taken control so quickly that he had nearly harmed an old man over a few words. He lowered the sword. The teacher bowed. "Here opens the gate of heaven." Heaven and hell, in this story, are not distant places. They are directions of the mind. One word can open a gate. One pause can close it. Anger itself is not a moral failure. It can reveal that a boundary has been crossed. It can provide energy to protect someone, correct injustice, or speak honestly. But anger becomes dangerous when it takes the steering wheel. A tired mind reacts quickly because it has little space. The message arrives, and the reply is sent before the heart has caught up. The child spills something, and the parent's voice becomes harsher than intended. The partner asks a question, and years of unspoken frustration answer at once. Later, shame enters. Then self-judgment. Then another promise never to react that way again. But shame rarely creates lasting change. Awareness does. You may notice growth when there is one breath between the wound and the response. Then 2 breaths. Then enough space to say, "I need a moment." This is not weakness. It is strength that does not need to prove itself. In Buddhist teaching, Karma is not a cosmic punishment system. It is the way intention, repetition, words, and actions shape the mind and influence future conditions. Each angry reaction makes the next reaction easier. Each patient pause makes patience more available. Each lie makes honesty harder. Each honest action strengthens the possibility of trust. Karma is found in the direction we practice. A single mistake does not define you, but what you repeat becomes a path. Some of the most important wealth in life will never appear in a bank account. A trustworthy heart is one of them. There was once an old carpenter who had worked for the same builder for many years. His hands were skilled, but his heart had grown tired. He wanted to retire, spend mornings with his wife, and sit beneath the tree behind their small home. When he told the builder asked him for one final favor. Build one last house. The carpenter agreed, but resentment entered his work. He used cheaper materials. He rushed the measurements. He covered mistakes instead of correcting them. From the outside, the house looked acceptable, but he knew it was not his best. When the work was finished, the builder handed him the key. "This house is yours," he said. "It is my gift for your years of service." The carpenter stood in silence. He had built the place where he would live. This story is not about perfection. It is about the houses we build inside ourselves through repeated choices. Every time we speak dishonestly, we must live in the room that dishonesty creates. Every time we betray our own boundary, we weaken the floor beneath us. Every time we act with care, even when no one notices, we strengthen something invisible. Compassion is not a ritual for receiving rewards. It is a way of building the mind in which we must live. You may be kind and still face loss. You may act with integrity and still be misunderstood. You may do the right thing and receive no applause. The value of the action is not erased. It shapes you. It becomes part of the home you carry wherever you go. You may notice change when you begin doing one kind act privately. No photograph, no announcement, no expectation of thanks. Perhaps you leave food for someone. Perhaps you call an aging parent. Perhaps you listen to your partner without preparing a defense. Perhaps you give your child 10 minutes of undivided attention. Perhaps you apologize without explaining why the other person also hurt you. These acts may appear small, but a life is built from what is repeated when no one is watching. Another old story tells of a monk being chased by a tiger. He ran until he reached the edge of a cliff. With the tiger behind him, he climbed over the edge and held onto a vine. Below him waited another tiger. Above him, 2 mice began chewing through the vine. Beside his hand, growing from a crack in the rock, was a strawberry. The monk picked it. He tasted it. "How sweet," he said. The story is not asking us to ignore danger. The monk was still in danger. The tiger did not disappear because he practiced gratitude. The vine remained fragile. The story points to something more honest. Even in an uncertain life, one moment can still be fully lived. Anxiety says, you may enjoy life after everything is secure. But everything is never completely secure. There will always be something unfinished. A medical result, a child traveling far from home, a financial concern, a changing body, a relationship you cannot control. If peace must wait until uncertainty ends, peace will wait forever. The strawberry is the ordinary moment we keep postponing. The warmth of morning light on the floor, the first sip of coffee before it goes cold, the sound of someone laughing in another room, a dog sleeping beside the door, a friend who answers, a meal that is simple but enough. You may notice that gratitude begins to appear without effort. Not dramatic gratitude. Not the demand to feel positive about pain. Just the recognition that this moment contains something that has not been taken from you. The mind can hold concern and appreciation at the same time. It can prepare for tomorrow and still taste today. There was once a student who asked his teacher to write something that would guide his family for generations. The teacher took a brush and wrote 3 words. Grandfather dies. Father dies. Son dies. The student was horrified. I asked for a blessing, he said. Why would you write something so terrible? The teacher replied, if your son dies before you, that is sorrow. If you die before your father, that is sorrow. But if your family lives and dies in the natural order, this is a great blessing. The student had wanted a promise that no one would die. The teacher offered a reminder to value the order of life while it remained. An aging parent may call at an inconvenient time. The same story may be repeated. The pauses may grow longer. The hearing may weaken. The parent who once carried you may now need patience from you. It is easy to believe there will be another call, another holiday, another family meal, another chance to ask the important question. But impermanence does not wait until we feel ready. This is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to bring you home. You may notice change when you make the delayed phone call, when you sit beside someone without checking the time, when you say, I love you, before the hospital hallway teaches you that some words should not be saved. Awareness does not make life longer. It makes us less absent from the life we have. A guide may point toward the door, but you must still take the step. A teacher can explain forgiveness, but you must decide what to release. A friend can suggest help, but you must make the appointment. A therapist can illuminate a pattern, but you must practice a different response. A child can ask for attention, but you must put down the phone. The door may be shown to us many times. Walking remains our responsibility. There was once a man who crossed a dangerous river using a raft he had built from branches and rope. The current was strong, but the raft carried him safely to the other side. Standing on dry ground, he looked back at the river and felt deep gratitude. This raft saved my life, he thought. I must never leave it. So he lifted it onto his shoulders and continued his journey. The raft became heavier with every mile. Other travelers asked why he carried it. This raft rescued me, he said. It is precious. They replied, yes, it was useful in the river. But now you are on land. Still, he refused to put it down. Many of the habits that exhaust us were once rafts. People-pleasing may have helped you stay safe in an unpredictable home. Perfectionism may have earned approval. Avoidance may have protected you from feelings too large to face at the time. Constant planning may have given you stability during chaos. Self-criticism may have seemed like a way to prevent failure. These habits are not evidence that something is wrong with you. They may be evidence that you adapted. But a raft that saved you in one season can become a burden in another. The question is not, why am I like this? A gentler question is, what did this once protect, and is it still needed now? You may notice inner change when you stop hating the version of yourself that survived. You thank that old strategy. Then you set it down. This is how self-judgment becomes awareness. Not through declaring yourself perfect, but through seeing clearly without cruelty. One evening, a monk entered the teacher's room carrying a lantern. He said, Master, I am afraid of the darkness. The teacher blew out the flame. The monk gasped. For several moments, neither spoke. Then the teacher asked, What has changed? I cannot see, the monk said. Is the room more dangerous than it was a moment ago? The monk listened. The same wind moved outside. The same floor supported him. The same teacher sat nearby. No, he said, but I imagine danger because I cannot see. The teacher replied, this is what the mind does with the future. Fear often fills empty space with painful certainty. A silent phone becomes rejection. A delayed result becomes disaster. A partner's quiet mood becomes proof that love is ending. A mistake at work becomes the beginning of ruin. The future is dark, and the mind begins painting shapes inside it. Preparation is wise. Catastrophe practiced in advance is exhausting. You do not need to believe every image fear creates. You may write down one fear and ask, what do I know? What am I imagining? What practical action is available today? Perhaps there is a phone call to make. Perhaps there is information to gather. Perhaps there is nothing to do until morning. Acceptance is not doing nothing. It is stopping the useless struggle with what cannot be acted upon yet. You may notice change when fear still visits, but no longer becomes your commander. You say, you may sit here, but you may not choose my next action. There is another Zen story about a monk who was known for his calm. One day, a family from the village accused him of fathering a young woman's child. The accusation was false. The monk listened as they shouted and condemned him. He said only, is that so? They left the baby in his care. The monk fed the child, kept it warm, and begged for milk in the village despite the insults he received. A year later, the young woman confessed that the child's father was someone else. Her family returned in shame. They explained the truth and asked for the baby back. The monk handed over the child. Is that so? He said, this story is not a command to accept false accusations passively. In real life, we may need to defend ourselves, seek legal help, protect a reputation, or leave an unsafe environment. The story points to the suffering created by needing the world to see us exactly as we see ourselves. Pride is not always loud. Sometimes it appears as the desperate need to correct every misunderstanding, to win every argument, to make sure no one thinks badly of us. But no human being is correctly understood by everyone. Some people will judge you from a single moment. Some will believe a rumor. Some will interpret your boundary as cruelty because they benefited from your lack of one. You can spend your life running from person to person with evidence, or you can live in a way that makes your own heart steady. This does not mean reputation never matters. It means your peace cannot depend entirely on the opinions of people who do not know your full story. You may notice change when you need less approval. Praise still feels pleasant. Criticism may still hurt, but neither becomes your identity. You listen for what is useful. You release what is not. You return to your values. There was once a master who asked a student to carry a bowl filled to the edge with water through a crowded market. If you spill one drop, the master said, you must begin again. The student walked slowly. Vendors shouted. Children ran between stalls. Music played. People argued over prices. But the student kept his attention on the water. When he returned without spilling, the master asked, did you see the dancers? No. Did you hear the musicians? Only faintly. Did you notice the man insulting you? The student looked surprised. No, the master said, when attention has a home, the noise of the world loses some of its power. Modern life is a crowded market. The mind is offered outrage, comparison, fear, desire, and distraction before breakfast. Every headline asks to enter. Every notification claims urgency. Every image presents another life to compare with your own. The exhausted mind is not always weak. Sometimes it is simply overexposed. Reducing noise is not ignorance. It can be stewardship of attention. You may choose 1 hour without your phone. You may stop reading comments that leave your body tense. You may sit in the car for 1 minute before entering the house. You may walk without listening to anything. You may return to meditation not as a performance, but as a place to notice what is already here. Attention is one of the ways a life takes shape. What you repeatedly attend to becomes easier to see. If you feed comparison, the world becomes a field of inadequacy. If you feed resentment, the past remains present. If you feed gratitude, ordinary goodness becomes visible. This is also karma, intention repeated through attention. The final story tells of an old monk who was asked what he had gained from many years of practice. The questioner expected something impressive. Perhaps visions, perhaps perfect calm, perhaps freedom from all sorrow. The monk thought for a moment. "I eat when I am hungry," he said. "I sleep when I am tired." The questioner laughed. "Everyone does that." The monk shook his head. "No. Most people eat while thinking of 100 things. They sleep while fighting the day. They speak while waiting to be heard. They walk while trying to arrive somewhere else. The deepest changes are often ordinary. Reacting less quickly, needing less approval, setting one calm boundary, forgiving without returning to harm, accepting that uncertainty is part of life, noticing thoughts without obeying them, feeling gratitude for what once seemed too small to matter. These signs may not impress the world, but they change the quality of a day, and days become a life. A peaceful later life is not only a large bank account or a respected name. It may mean fewer regrets, honest relationships, manageable needs, a stable home, enough health to enjoy the morning, someone to call, the ability to sleep, a mind that no longer fights every memory. To protect that kind of peace, we practice honesty, gratitude, humility, boundaries, restraint, forgiveness, responsibility, and compassion. Not perfectly, repeatedly. The person who changes their life is not the person who finds a miracle. It is the person who wakes up and no longer lives in the old way. Perhaps tomorrow, nothing outside you will be dramatically different. The same responsibilities may wait. The same traffic may move. The same difficult person may speak in the same difficult way. But you may meet the moment differently. You may pause before answering. You may do one necessary task instead of worrying about 10. You may rest without proving you have earned it. You may apologize honestly. You may call someone you love. You may ask for help. You may forgive wisely. You may leave what is harmful. You may sit quietly long enough to hear your own life again. Imagine evening light entering an ordinary room. A cup of tea cools on the table. The rain that lasted all afternoon has finally stopped. Water rests on the leaves outside. Nothing has been solved forever. No promise has been made that pain will never return. Yet for this moment, the room is quiet. The body is breathing. The mind does not need to chase the next thought. Peace does not begin when life becomes perfect. Peace begins when we learn to meet life with awareness. Letting go is not giving up. It is releasing what the heart can no longer carry. It is putting down the raft after crossing the river. It is setting down the traveler at the shore. It is washing the bowl. It is tasting the strawberry. It is turning toward the dark room and discovering that the floor still holds you. The temple bell fades because sound knows how to leave. The evening sky darkens without resistance. The tea cools. The road grows quiet, and somewhere inside you, beneath the planning, the remembering, the defending, and the fear, there is a place that has never needed to fight every moment. Return there gently, not once, again and again. This is how awareness changes the direction of a life. This is how peace is practiced in ordinary moments. If this reflection brought you a moment of peace, please subscribe to Still Mind Temple and share it with someone who may need a quiet place to rest today.